All right, my name's David Estes. I'm the CTO and co-founder of Morpheus, and we're kind of going to dig into an introductory look at Morpheus. We're going to look at the self-service and platform operation capabilities of the product. We're going to start at the beginning and those building blocks so we can actually show you some more later on. So let's go ahead and dive into the application. We've got our demo environment here, and this is actually the first thing you see when you log into Morpheus. You get this nice history and dashboard. But we're going to actually step over to self-service. We're going to go into provisioning instances to get really into this. So one of the great things about Morpheus is its ability to self-service provision, and it's agnostic, meaning it could be a VM, it could be a container, it could be a cloud-native application, it could be a complex blueprint, it could be Terraform, all those types of things. So not only are we orchestrating just basic VMs, we're orchestrating complex applications. The real goal here is that the business logic is important at the end of the day. So we want to deploy that or have the ability for you to automate that end to end. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to do some basic provisioning here. This is our instance catalog. These are kind of your building blocks, and you can define these and build these yourself. We do provide some base ones out of the box. I'm going to pick an Ubuntu instance, for example. And then you get to pick a group and a cloud. So in Morpheus, a group is like an organizational representation just for structure. It'll also can be coupled to RBAC, so what you have access to and what you can do within that group, and policy enforcement. So we've got this demo group, and then I'm going to pick a cloud. In the interest of time, I'll do AWS. It is fast, and we can do VMware as well, or all these other clouds that we have in this environment. But we'll stick with this one for now. You'll notice the name here is grayed out. So you can actually allow them to do freeform names, but there's a policy in place here, and it's a strict policy. We do this so our sales engineers don't run away with random names throughout our environment. And we'll go more into policy enforcement as we go through. So I'm going to hit next. The next thing Morpheus does is it actually creates a dynamic instance wizard. This wizard is basically knows the capabilities of that cloud and exposes things. It's not the least common denominator. It literally is going to show you advanced options that are relevant to that cloud. For example, I can do provisioned IOPS in AWS. I can pick my storage pools. I can do GP3, GP2, all that type of stuff. We do standardize common concepts, though, like the resource pool is basically a VPC in this case. It could be a Azure resource group. It could be a VMware resource pool cluster or an OpenStack project as an example. I'm going to pick a size here. We'll just do a T2 micro and pick a version here. I'll do 2204. We can pick a layout if there are different layouts. And what that is if this were both a Docker container or a VM, I could pick between those. It actually analyzes that cloud's capability set and provision types, basically, and allows you to pick those. I'm going to pick a network here just for kicks. We can also set defaults, but I'm going to pick that one. And let's pick a security group. There's a lot of more advanced options, and we won't dig into these too much, but you can do a lot of customization here. I'll get into something else about this too. Go ahead.
Do those group dropdowns, do they support like nested folders where you could classify them, kind of have a breakout?
Nested folders on the, you mean the previous step?
Yeah, so if you like selected the security groups, there's a bunch of options. If you have hundreds of options, can you have a folder inside of that?
Oh, so not on security groups, but there is it will switch to a type ahead mode. Once there's like a limit, and then it switches to a type ahead mode, and then you can find them. You can also set defaults, so when you come to this wizard, you don't have to pick them. I'll actually show you that here in a minute. There's a lot of customizability. So this is just basic.
With the selections of the options here, can the same template to produce the machine be restricted by the RBAC rules, where if I'm from a certain group, I only get certain options, etc.?
Exactly. Every object representation is that way. So like the network I picked, you have group access control for networks. Right. The security groups are the same way. Domains, IPAM, all that type of stuff is restricted based on your RBAC access.
Yeah, I'd say because our demo group has every cloud and connectivity known to man, and David's as super admin as it get, you're getting the,
yeah, you're
the full Monty, so to speak.
Right?
Yep. The next step we do is we have an automation step here. I could optionally attach a workflow that lives throughout the lifecycle of the application. Workflows in our automation engine have phases like teardown, provisioning. They're basically evented. So it lives with the workload. So if you've got something that needs to set something up on provision, but when you go delete it later, it needs to be sure it runs a teardown, you can build those types of workflows and attach those to your workflow. We'll skip the rest of this here, but you will notice that there is a lifecycle policy in place. Because it's a demo group in our demo environment, we have sales engineers that forget to clean their mess up. So this will actually automatically shut down after 24 hours and delete itself after 48. Do a quick review here, hit complete. All right, so that was a basic application. You can drill into it. You can see it's going to give you an estimated time to completion. You get some nice statistics and charts that'll come up here in a little bit. We get costing and pricing information. And in the case of Amazon, we actually sync the curve file from Amazon if you've got that set up appropriately. And we'll start showing you the pricing and forecasting of this workload as well. You can see things like the resources involved. You can have multiple VMs per instance. It's not necessarily one-to-one. So if you got like horizontal scaling or a scale group or something like that. You've also got runtime, storage, network, all the fun stuff here. So I'll dig into that. It's actually moving very fast. That's one of the reasons I picked that cloud. It's just quicker. So we'll go out of there. One other thing I wanted to show you is the big thing about self-service and provisioning, right, is I kind of showed you the kitchen sink. I showed you every little nook and cranny. You can do that on the API. As a matter of fact, there's a full open API spec at apidocs.morpheusdata.com. Everything I'm doing in this UI throughout this demo, there is an API for, so feel free to check that out. There's also a CLI as well. So with regards to consuming your cloud, right, there's other ways you might want to consume it. We have customers who want, to give DevOps that full access control, and some who want to give them basically a shopping cart. Like, I just want to pick my t-shirts from very few questions, and based on those questions, do all the work. So there's two steps to that. One, we have apps, and these allow you to create more complicated, like multi-tiered application blueprints. Or you can use them to deploy Terraform. We actually can link to a Git repo and pull in your Terraform files and run Terraform for you, that kind of thing, OpenTofu, that kind of stuff. We can also do that with ARM and CloudFormation. And also, we have the ability to build custom catalogs where you actually, from the start to finish, can build out your catalog. Actually, I'm going to show you one of those. Let's go to Blueprints. Go to Catalog Items. Ubuntu Forms is a good one. This one's a little bit more of an advanced one. Let's see here. Ubuntu Dashform. To edit here. I think I hit the, oh, of course. My SSO session expired. Perfect time. All right. Let's go back here. Blueprints. Catalog items. What? The pencil here, you can see we actually see like a preview form, which is really cool. I can actually drill into this and actually do some adjustments to different things. I can change this field. I have form variables as well that I can drag in. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can do with how you edit that form. These are just the form previews. Sorry, this is the catalog item. Let me go to the form itself. If you look at that form, it's going to tell you it's using forms, OS, demo, Ubuntu. It's using the UBU form. Okay. We go to forms, which is under template. Options, sorry. Forms, you can see you can build complex forms. So you have basically a builder. I'm just going to pull one of these up. Here's one. Where you actually kind of build complex forms. So there's a visual builder. So we're allowing you to build that self-service aspect that's more of that generic shopping cart capability, or more like maybe a ServiceNow order or something like that. If you actually go to the catalog, we also have this concept of persona. So you can lock a user down so they don't see all these options. They can just get the basic catalog view. And that's what is over here. There's this persona switch and control. So I'm going to actually go to Ubuntu Forms. You have it in both views. So you can kind of see, like, this is a more complicated one. See, I got a group cloud. I can do some customizations. All these components, you can mix and match. You don't have to show them. You could say, hey, I don't want to show the disk component. I want to hard code it to a certain thing. Or I don't want to show the network component. Or maybe I want to make a custom component for determining the security group I want to use. You have full control of that. You can even pull from third-party data sources for the drop-downs, the type heads, all that type of thing. So
does something like this tie into EKS, JKE, GKE, and those sorts of things? I mean, can you deploy something like a Google Kubernetes enterprise, solution?
Yeah. Yep. Right here. This is our cluster management. I'm actually going to go to, let's see, we've actually got a newer version of this that's coming out. We talked about that today. So if we go here, let me go here. I'll wait for that to pull up. But yeah, so there's full cluster management and deployment. So I can say, hey, I want to deploy, a regular Kubernetes cluster. We'll go deploy Morpheus MKS. We can say, hey, I'm going to put that in VMware. I'm going to put that in AWS, or I can say, hey, I want to use EKS, GKE, all those types of things. So you can go over here and say, hey, let's do AKS. So I can then pick demo group, pick the Azure, probably US, and you're going to get options relevant to provisioning an AKS cluster. See,
It's kind of that second use case, right? So remember that first one is actually that end user experience who just wants the service, not the underlying infra. But now you don't into the actual cluster deployment wizard.
Right, and we'll dig into this create cluster here. This is the new cluster wizard thing. See, it gives you a better description of what's going on. I can pick that EKS, that AKS, or just straight Kubernetes, which is the Morpheus Kubernetes opinionated deployment. Not only that, you can actually customize your cluster layout. Meaning, if you have, like, say you already have your way of deploying Kubernetes in your corporate environment, it's via Ansible, and you want to leverage that and automate that, you can actually go and build that under library templates and blueprints, and you can build compute type sets with all your scripts and your Ansible playbooks and workflows, and automatically take advantage of that.
The library I've seen there, you had the virtual images. So is there any integration, like let's say with the HCP Packer from HashiCorp and stuff like that?
With Packer?
Yeah, with Packer, yeah.
Yeah. So for the images side here, library virtual images, firstly, it's going to give you system images, ones we provide that we have available. You also will see it discover. So as we add clouds, it does discovery, right? So if you've got templates in vCenter, say you've got a content library, that's all there. We do have a image builder tool as well that works like Packer. It actually uses hypervisor console to connect, can do scripts and stuff like that. And then we're actually making this pluggable as well. So you can use Packer, but we also do have an image build tool built into the product.
Okay,
so.
Cool.
Okay. One of the other things we kind of talked about, so you can kind of see we've done all the discovery or the self-service automation, right? The multiple ways to consume it, provision. We can also do complex workflows, and you can have workflows talking to Ansible. So I can say, hey, I want to run an Ansible playbook, right? So pick an Ansible playbook task. I can actually pick a repo and a ref and reference the playbook. So you don't have to just paste your playbook in here. So Morpheus has very deep integration with Git for version control and allows you to reference all that stuff. And once you build these out, you can use them throughout the application and reuse them.
Does that version control extend to the actual orchestration itself, the activities you're doing?
It can, yes. We have an export and import tool. So say you've built a custom blueprint in Morpheus in your dev test environment and you want to leverage that. We have a scribe templating format. It's basically HCL. So if you're used to HCL and Terraform, you can leverage a similar syntax to build those import files. And then we also have an integration with that in code. I don't know if it's in the demo environment. Yeah, so there's a Morpheus export. And this is the sales engineers branch, so no idea what I'm going to find here. Probably empty. Once you have this set up, you can actually configure import export, and it'll actually periodically dump files. You can do it automatically or manually. You can even filter by label, like only things with the David label do I want to periodically export. Then you go to another Morpheus, and you can pull those in if you attach to the same repo.
And so all of this is, on a slightly different question, all of this is tied to your RBAC environment.
Yeah, RBAC real quick.
Are you providing auditing and logging as well?
Yes. So Morpheus has full audit log and all the compliance stuff you need for that. From that perspective, it stores logs. As a matter of fact, there's a whole health dashboard where you can monitor your overall environment. This health is not related to your workloads. It's related to the Morpheus appliance itself. But you also there's your logs. There's actually all the stuff you need with regards to that. You can forward those logs or configure those for being forwarded. We have integrations to where you can actually we automatically set up logging on the workloads you deploy, especially for Linux and Windows, but you can configure those to also forward to like a Splunk or something like that as well.
Yeah, from an audit trail, certainly. I mean, the reason we do very well in defense, finance, healthcare, you can lock this down and track every nook and cranny. Right. Really quick, I will highlight the role-based access control. You can configure identity sources or use locals. So you can tie into AD, SAML, Okta, JumpCloud, all that type of stuff, and do mappings and whatnot. Once you do have your roles set up, there's a lot of customizability there. So, for example, let's go to this demo role.
You have all the features that you've seen me use in the UI. You have fine-grained control of a lot of things with lifecycle as well. Like, hey, they're gonna are you gonna allow them to resize their VM? Can they add a disk? Can they change the disk type? All those types of options are in here. Just to give you a level of depth there. You can also control, hey, what groups do they have access to? What instance types are they allowed to provision? What blueprints, report types can they run? What personas can they see, etc. So a lot of this stuff is accessible. And this is kind of the overall view. And then you've got the merge view when you go to a user, right? So I'm a system admin here. We'll just pick this user. You can kind of drill in and see, hey, what's this user have access to? And they can be assigned multiple roles, right? So they can actually get all that type of, I can add them to, a demo role, right?
Yeah, forgive me for my ignorance, but I mean, as there's a platform perspective here, and then there's an application perspective, and there's a functional perspective. And what we're talking about here is that you are able to provision, automate platform infrastructure kinds of solutions. You're not interfacing with something like Vertex or cloud functionality or something like that, which is more of an application perspective. You're not deploying and provisioning specific applications here.
Oh, yes, we are. Yeah, we totally can do that. Mm-hmm.
Huh.
We're not just deploying infrastructure. We're not just deploying VMs. We can deploy containers. We can deploy applications. I think there's an Apache web server in here. You can do more complex things, of course. We had Mongo as an example, fully clustered, all that type of stuff. So you have as a matter of fact, that's where we started. We started at the application layer before we drilled into the infrastructure. So that's why we have a better, I think one of the really unique things about Morpheus is its data model, because it looked at the application deployment first and then went out each direction. It went into the life cycle on one direction and in the other direction down into the infrastructure.
When we represent that instance catalog, I mean, he picked Ubuntu, and we've talked a lot about infrastructure because historically Cloud Field Day is a bunch of infrastructure folks. We all came, a lot of us came out of infrastructure, but that instance catalog could be a 7-node sharded MongoDB cluster, a 3-node MySQL. You can, have deployment of, data schemas or websites into that. I mean, the deployment mechanism is there from an application perspective. Back to the genesis, right? The reason this platform exists was a bunch of application developers who had no patience or time to wait for an infrastructure person to go turn a bunch of knobs and get them the infrastructure they needed. So they built it from that application perspective. But at the end of the day, the consumer and the people who are setting up that paved road has to have the tooling into their infrastructure, their dependencies, whether that's hooks into ServiceNow for CMDB, hooks into their IPAM tool for IP address management, hooks into their network. So there are a lot of infrastructure components when you see it, but that's because that's what we're automating so that app dev does not have to sit and wait and watch the clock die.
Does something like this interface with something like Juniper Apstra and things of that nature?
Juniper, from a network perspective,
So Apstra, is there a network automation solution sort of thing?
We have pluggable, task types are pluggable. We haven't done one for them specifically, but the plugin model is extremely fluid. So it doesn't mean, like I said, I had a guy at HP who wrote a Slurm task type plugin to do a bunch of cool AI stuff. We've had some very creative people do some things with the platform framework to make it extend, to put it into new places. That's, I guess, the difference between a product and a platform is the extensibility. But we have to have center of mass around a use case, and so that's kind of what we're hitting here. We want to make sure we're conscious of time so that Martez can go, and then we don't shortchange you on MVM. This was the tasting menu of the provisioning experience. You got a little bit of governance. Again, we could demo for hours, as Stephen and team know, who've seen us do this before.
Yep. Yeah, just wrapping up. I mean, we talked about that infrastructure side. I pulled up some stuff while Brad was talking, and we also do discovery. So we're not just sitting here like greenfield only. So you can pull your existing infrastructure in, and then we also talked about that life cycle and guidance Brad talked about earlier, where you can do right sizing and analysis and things like that. So there's a lot here. Probably not enough time in this one to dig into that, but definitely wanted to kind of highlight those things.
And Morpheus deployed as you mentioned, both on-prem as well as SaaS. Solution, and you have agents sitting in the infrastructure, or how does that play out?
So we have a couple ways. So we have an agent that can run on the VMs themselves and provide additional data. Think of it like a VMware tools agent. We can, if you don't have that, we are agent optional. You can use SSH WinRM for remote operations. You can ingest stats from the hypervisor if it's available, depending on what the hypervisor provides. And then we also have a distributed worker where you can install that in an environment. Maybe you've got Morpheus deployed in the public cloud and you don't have a direct connect and you want it to orchestrate your VMware. We have the ability for you to basically set up that worker or connector in that environment and talk back.